Leeds have released their accounts, and it's a record turnover for them. But there's also the story of owing money to a player. They paid out a lot to get rid of Bielsa, but luckily I'm not talking through that. I've got Adam with us, who is the main man for finances at Football Insider. He can talk us through all that. We're also joined by the brilliant Peter O'Rourke, who can talk to us about maybe what Leeds summer might look like, some players who could come or go as well. So we'll get into that afterwards too. But Adam, talk to me first about the Leeds accounts. A record turnover for the club.
Yeah, record turnover. That's right. Should probably caveat that by saying that, I mean, it's not unusual to see record turnovers within the Premier League at the moment, and just with the kind of the gravity of the TV deal. But yeah, I mean, it's a good headline nonetheless. So 189 million quid record turnover. The loss on that was 34 million quid. So, I mean, that might sound like a lot in terms of, just a one-off sum. But if you look around at the wider context within the Premier League, within the Championship as well, it's not that bad, really. I mean, you can have a broader conversation about, the Premier League and whether sort of those losses are sustainable for aspirational clubs like Leeds across the board. But when you zoom out on the graph, not a disaster at all. And obviously it's bolstered by that record turnover figure as well. Since some sort of questions around FFP and their situation around there, kind of got to align that with the fact that they made a profit last season, one of only a handful of clubs in the Premier League to do that. There's a lot of upside in terms of the commercial results, which I think were very positive. We know there's long-term plans to expand the stadium there. They're going to add almost 20,000 seats. I think it's 18,000 seats. And then obviously you've got the 49ers dynamic as well. I think that's only going to improve the kind of the business savviness aspect of the club, particularly with commercial things. There's a couple of lines in there about the independent regulator possibly causing a material risk. I think that's nonsense, really, especially in the short term. It might sort of have cause some flux in the boardroom in terms of governance, but financially, nothing in the immediate future. Yeah, I mean, obviously relegation is the kind of the spectre that's hanging over all of this. But in my view, anyway, even if that was to be the case, I mean, they've got saleable assets. I think, Pete's probably going to talk us through this shortly. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be sort of positive about if you kind of zoom out on the graph, as I say, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. There's lots of clubs in the kind of similar situation. Everton have a new stadium being built. Could they go down? Obviously, their financial output was different when that came out. If you want to know more about that, we did a video on that before. It's on the channel. And you've got Leeds with the stadium expansion. But then also, on the other hand, as we put out 6 months ago, I think it was yourself, Adam, this Jean-Kevin Augustin, Pete reliably informed us before we started, he played 38 minutes for the club, and he's now getting £24.5 million.
48,
sorry. 40. So you've shortchanged
48 minutes.
Yeah?
48
yeah,
minutes. Sorry,
48 minutes, yeah. Come on.
That's an extra £1 million a minute, isn't it? Yeah.
Shortchanging him.
Yeah.
Apologies. 48 minutes, an absolute stalwart in the team, so he was. But he's now getting £24.5 million after Leeds have found to breach the former player's contract. What does this mean in terms of knock-on, Adam? Does this affect their accounts this year? Does it affect their accounts next year? How does this work? And why are they paying? The major question I think I've seen asked by punters is, why are they paying him? Surely they'd be paying the club because was it not a buy fee from the loan? It's a very complicated situation, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of get into long grass with it all, but the long and short of it is that they had the obligation to buy when the loan was active in 2019-20, and that was an obligation to buy if they went up. They argued that the fact that the season was delayed by COVID basically meant that that clause was void. CAS haven't agreed with that, but this was the thing we reported on about 6 months ago. And they've ordered Leeds to pay RB Leipzig 15.5 million quid. So that's before this latest development with the 24.5 million pounds. So that's done and dusted. That is factored into the accounts. That's confirmed in the accounts this year. The 24.5 million is slightly different. I think it could be ultimately. I mean, it could be several years until this is like the full scope of this is properly realised, because this is at this ruling's come from the FIFA Dispute Resolution Chamber, so not CAS. I'll be honest, I don't know. I'm not completely familiar with all the legal nuts and bolts of it, but I'm pretty sure this could go to CAS on appeal as well if it gets escalated.
Well, Leeds have appealed already.
Leeds have appealed at the FIFA Dispute Resolution Chamber, yeah. But then I think that the way it works in terms of the seniority of the judicial system is that it would ultimately go to CAS. So. Yeah, we should caveat that by saying we don't know what the final ruling will be, but I think it's probably safe to say that they will be able to sort of kick this can down the road for a little while. And when they do have to pay up, as I think is the case with they're doing with the initial 15.5 million, they'll do that in installments. I think they've sort of negotiated that with Leipzig to make sure it's not all in one fell swoop. And ultimately, they will have known this was a real possibility. And I assume it's just good business practice to assume that, I mean, they would have made the kind of the financial adjustments for it not to be, all coming out in one fell swoop and a bit of a disaster, and massively reducing your transfer budget, say, in one season. So it'll be staggered. I mean, Pete might know quite a lot more about this than me. My sort of conjecture, really, but I thought maybe the main concern might be the kind of reputation that Leeds have picked up in terms of not honouring contracts to players. I don't know how much that bearing that has in terms of individual negotiations, but yeah. So while it might be a bit of a disastrous headline financially, I don't think it's going to cause major operational issues at this stage, I would have thought.
Well, 48 minutes, and that's £40 million paid out. That's just under £1 million a minute, really, for his services. So, Pete, do you want to pick up on that point Adam made? How would this affect them with players coming into the club, looking at the club, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's not a good look for Leeds United. There's obviously that. I'm sure a lot of agents will be looking at it and thinking, oh, is my client going to get paid? Is going to get his contract fulfilled and everything else? Obviously, this was a one-off situation. I think there was a bit of unrest behind the scenes in his initial signing. I don't think Marcelo Bielsa was that keen on signing him in the first place, but Leeds went ahead and did it, and that's why he didn't get as many minutes as was forecasted by many people when he did join the club as well. So it's been an acrimonious situation for everybody involved in Leeds. As Adam mentioned, obviously they've already started paying out this money to RB Leipzig for the transfer fee, which was around 15 million now. There's 24.5 million fee to the player as well. I think that covers his 5-year contract, which was table when they signed him on loan. There was like an obligation to become permanent on Leeds winning promotion, which they did. Obviously, Leeds then said it was a COVID pandemic during the time, so they didn't fulfill that obligation to sign Augustin on a permanent deal. So I think the deal was 5-year deal, 80 grand a week, and that's why it totals up to 24.5 million. So it's been a real expensive mistake by Leeds, and I think I know they're going to be paying it in installments, but yeah, it's going to hurt transfer budget, I think, going forward. It's maybe in the next couple of windows. It's a unnecessary payment that they need to be doing, and yeah, real just messy sort of outcome, I think, for everybody involved. It's good news for Kevin Augustin, obviously, who picks up a nice paycheck out of it, as long as that Leeds don't win their appeal against it as well. But yeah, real messy situation for Leeds, and I'm sure something they want to see repeated, and I'm sure they'll have learned from it as well. But yeah, I'm sure in the background, maybe some clubs and players might be a bit more wary of what they do with Leeds United and contract-wise, because Augustin and his people believe there was an obligation there, and obviously that was proved right by Cass with RB Leipzig winning their case, and now Kevin Augustin winning so far with Leeds' appeal in already as well. So yeah, difficult situation for Leeds. They could do with that money staying in the transfer kitty for next season.
Yeah, the COVID pandemic does seem to caveat a lot of these issues that seem to come up at the moment. The clubs are able to whether use it or put it to certain things when they come up. It does change the game. But yeah, you're right. Kevin Augustin will be a very happy man should everything come off for £24 million to his name. And like you said, Pete, that's that 5-year contract at 80 grand a week or so covered as well if that happens.